Welcome. So glad you're here. And today I'm beginning a series on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. There are many of these books. I really like this book, Mukunda Styles. It's very simple, as you can see. It is 196 lines. Then it gets into, this breaks down the Sanskrit, but it's 196 lines.
So there's not a commentary with this?
There's no commentary.
Straight up, okay.
Sutra straight up, which is, I really like to start with when I'm reading a scripture without somebody's commentary. I want to just read it myself and get a hit for it, and then I like to add on commentaries.
But who's translating it?
This is Mukunda Styles translation. And I like his translation. I have a lot of opinions about every translation at this point. When I started studying the sutras, there were only 3 copies available. So I took those 3 copies and had them out and read each one and then sort of compared them. There's a book out now that that I really love, and it's by a man named Salvatore Zambita. And he used to come to Kripalu, and what I used to tell my students was, buy this book, because that's not in Salvatore's book. And then in Salvatore's book, I should have brought it. It's a big book. So it's like, 8.5 by 11. And it's like $60, but when you buy that book, you're buying 12 copies of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Because what he does is, you open the book, and on page 1, it will say, like the first sutra, Atha Yoga Nushasanam. So it says it phonetically. Then it's in Devanagari script. Then it breaks down Atha and what it means just in terms of a very literal translation. Yoga, literal translation. Nushasanam, literal translation. And then there's an interpretation of it. And then on the other, and then what I love, blank space. And then on the other page, there are 12 different translations of that first sutra of Atha Yoga Nushasanam by really good people. Satchidananda, Taimini, Georg Fierstein. So really very cool translations. But what's great is in studying, like I used to have it on my kitchen table and do 1 sutra a day. It's like read the sutra, feel what it's like, decide to, sit down and meditate with the sutra, read 12 different translations. Hey Sumo, so glad you're here. Nice to see you, Swati. Come in, please. There's a seat here, there's a seat here. So glad you came. So I just started. I'm talking about the Patanjali Sutras. And again, I'd like to say at any point, interrupt me, ask questions. I first want to just talk about the book itself and Patanjali. Come on, Leela, it's okay. Yeah, you can let her out. Yeah, that book is really great if you decide to study it. And then what I like about the blank space is, what I've done is I'll read the first sutra, read the 12 translations, do my meditation, and then write my own version of the sutras on what that sutra means to me. So I have my own copy of the sutras, having gone through all of the 196. Patanjali. So this is, I'll just tell you a few of the debates. Many people, most people think that Patanjali was a real person who existed about 2,000 years ago, about 2,200 years ago. And then there's sort of a difficulty with that, which is Patanjali, the word Patanjali means divine oracle. Someone, so you can be a Patanjali or your name can be Patanjali. If you are a Patanjali, it means you're a divine oracle and you channeled the material. So it's a great name, and there's this belief that Patanjali was a real person. Or it could be that someone just channeled the material, called himself a Patanjali, and we don't know who wrote it. Either way, the guy's dead a long time ago, so we don't really know him. It's also like my name, Devarshi, is also a title, and it's also a name. So it's really interesting that my name is Devarshi Stephen Hartman, because Devarshi can be a title. Devarishi, it means a teacher of God, one of God's teachers, and it's often, used as a title. It's also a name. There is a debate about the 4th chapter. So the 4th chapter some people feel is completely not written by Patanjali. And I'm in that field because the first 3 chapters are so tight and so pithy and so scientific and so devoid of anything that could sort of hook up the mind into a personal belief, so that it's just as clean. I've never seen anything so clean. It's almost so clean that it can sometimes be hard to understand, because it's just very scientific in terms of the technology. That's what I feel this is. The technology of personal growth. This is the technology of how to find freedom. This is the manual for manual for yoga. Would you like to find freedom? Here's how you do it. These are the exercises to freedom. That's pretty cool. You want enlightenment and samadhi? Here it is. Now, so imagine having the assignment, because I often think of this. If someone said 200 lines, you get to write down the workings of the universe and the mind in 200 lines. Like, who could do that? And I'm saying here, let's cut off of 50 of them. So 150 lines, because that last chapter repeats itself, has a completely different voice, goes off in different directions. And there was this belief that a scripture had to have 4 chapters, padas, 4 feet. And so someone may have just added on a last commentary about it, but Patanjali would not waste a word, would not repeat himself, would not, like, every ounce and syllable was packed. And then you get into this last chapter where it's like it's a completely different voice. So I am of the school that last chapter is not written by the same person who wrote the first 3. And there's nothing new. I don't even read the last chapter anymore, because it's like there's just nothing new in it. And it's so much said better in the first 3 chapters. So that's my little opinion about that. Any questions about Patanjali's Yoga Sutras before we get into it?
He's depicted often, I think, as a naga, the bottom part of his body being serpent and the upper part being human. What do you know about that? I mean,
Well,
just in terms of a man, or it was just a symbolic thing?
it's a symbolic thing,
Yeah.
and yep, yeah. And often there's statues of Patanjali in that form, with his bottom as a serpent. And yep.
Is Patanjali the root of all the yoga systems?
No. So great question. So much older than this. This is actually a pretty new scripture in yogic scripture, 2,200 years old. The Bhagavad Gita, 5,000 years or older, because when we say, like, India has a long oral tradition, and that can seem iffy, except here's the thing about that's different in India than in other places. Sanskrit, which is a spiritual language, Devanagari, the language of the angels, it's actually based in the binary code. It is a vibrational language, and it's said, in religions, there's in the beginning was the word, and then the word became manifest. So Sanskrit is actually like when it's the word tree, it's actually the word that manifested tree, the sound vibration that manifested a tree, which is really unique. So it's saying that it's the oldest language that we have on the planet. So the first language, the oldest language that we have on the planet. Most of our ancient languages stem from that Sumerian Sanskrit spiritual language, which is why we have things like we say Om, and then you go into Hebrew, and it's Amen. Okay, it's the same thing. Shanti, Om, Shalom. There's a lot of that. Krishna is the God of light and love. Cristo is the light and love, and that's Latin. So there's a lot of roots in other ancient languages that come to Sanskrit. Again, the seed mantras, bij mantras, I'm not going to go down this road, but they're vibrational. The mouth is a cathedral, and these seed mantras are the 6 seeds of all sounds that make up every sound. And it's really interesting when you start to study Sanskrit, how it's so logical. It makes so much sense. It is like, it's the difference between, like, you know, a foot in a yard versus the metric system, which makes a whole lot of sense. So let's see. I have done this before. I'll do it for you guys. But imagine that this is the surface of water, okay? This is on a YouTube video, and this YouTube video was life-changing to me. If this was the surface of water, they put on a high vibration Om on the surface of water. So first, the surface of water is blank. And then all of a sudden, Om starts being chanted. And the first thing that happens when Om starts being chanted is the water starts to vibrate. And then what starts happening is a ridge appears and a circle appears. And this ridge vibrates up and a circle appears. Well, a circle is sacred geometry. In the circle, this edge of the circle, the mathematical formulation is pi, which never ends. There's no beginning and no end to this circle. The moment you have a circle, you just defined something. There was nothing, and now there's this, and there's this. Now we have a something. So something just manifested. Once that circle rises up with the vibration of Om, it starts to spin like a toilet's been flushed. So this circling starts. And then what happens is it starts to circle in on itself. And then what happens is this starts to spiral, and then this starts to spiral. And then what you get is this ridge rises up, and it starts to go in a continual motion where it's like in circle. So this is a yin-yang. This is an ancient symbol of duality. It's in crop circles all over the world. It's, you know, you've seen it before where one side will be white with a black dot and the other side is black, you know, with a white dot. And what the Tao Te Ching says is that in the universe, when manifestation happens, everything is always in the process of turning into its opposite. You know, and we get caught in, or not caught, but we become a part of this ever-present changing circle of duality. And beyond all of that is the changeless. So that's pretty cool because, you know, when you're chanting Om, this isn't just like some, I'm so cool, I'm New Age, Om. You know, it's like when we're chanting Om, the sound of all sounds, this sacred vibration starts to go through our cells and bring things back into balance. It is a healing sound that takes place and brings things back into balance. One of the practices that Patanjali lays out here and is laid out in other sutras is chant Om continually. Like that in and of itself, it's not just a head thing like keep your mind on the sound of Om. It's like that vibration will heal you. That's pretty cool. So along with this, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who in Fairfield, Iowa, he did a lot when he came here in the 70s. He really wanted to merge yoga and science. And so they continue still to do a lot of research in regards to proving yogic practices as being beneficial. And one of the experiments that they did back in the 70s was about mantra and sound. And they put sand metal shavings on metal, and then they put in soundproof rooms different people who repeatedly, or endless loop tapes that repeatedly repeated certain mantras. So for example, they did the mantra Ram, Ram, Ram. That was Gandhi's mantra. And when that was repeated very quickly, a mandala formed itself, like a snowflake, a symmetrical snowflake formed itself in the metal shavings. And then it stayed, so it didn't keep changing. It's like the sound of Ram has a vibration and a snowflake pattern that it creates, and that's it. And it formed relatively fast. And then they did Om Namah Shivaya, and then they did the mantra that I was given, which is the 12-syllable mantra, and one of the more complicated mantras, which is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Well, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya took a lot longer before the pattern got set and was very intricate. It was, like a very complex snowflake and mandala. And I had remembered when I was given my mantra, I took on the practice of mantra recitation heavily. It was like my main practice, and I was going to just continually repeat mantra. I repeated mantra all day during work and chanting out loud, and mantra at night before bed, and all the time. Always had my bala beads, was always doing mantra. And because I had read, particularly with that mantra, the 12-syllable mantra, that it took longer to set the pattern in than other mantras. So I was like, it said it took a lock and a quarter. Well, a lock and a quarter it's 108,000 repetitions times 100, and it's something like 14 million, over 14.5 million repetitions. Okay, so I was on that. I've done many locks and a quarters, but I really wanted to have that pattern set in. And I remember being pissed that we didn't get given a mantra like Ram, that was like could be set in really quickly, this bold snowflake. So the sound of Sanskrit, it's meant to be sung. This goes back to what I was saying about the oral tradition. When we have scriptures, most all Sanskrit scripture, sutras, sutra means thread. It means it means that it's in a poem-like form. And often, as we know, when something is channeled in divine material, it often comes out in its own pentameter. Doesn't matter what language it is. Of course, in Miracles has its own pentameter. Lots of Emmanuel books, which are channeled, have their own pentameter. Well, Sanskrit, in order to be considered scripture, one of the checklists is that it should be divinely inspired. A human being is simply the oracle for it. And when you get those sutras laid out, they come out in poem-like form. They often rhyme. And so singing the Guru Gita, singing the Bhagavad Gita, singing the sutras is a great way to learn something. It's also, when you rhyme, and this helps with oral tradition, like if I was a teacher, a guru, and I would say, well, before I die, first place, I'm going to memorize the Guru Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm going to sing it. And I'm going to make sure that before I die, I have disciples who have memorized this, who are going to make sure that before they die, they have disciples who are going to memorize this. And because it's a song-like form, it's got more checks and balances in it than just like the game of telephone, where we're just telling stories and it all gets screwed up. So that's a little bit about trying to talk about the age. But the Bhagavad Gita, way older than this. And the Bhagavad Gita really has the essence of bhakti yoga in it, which is the heart of all yoga. It has the real non-dual philosophy in it. It has plenty of practices in it. But this is really a personal growth manual for how does consciousness transform itself. And that's why it continues to interest me. So that's why it continues to interest me. How does consciousness transform itself? What? And again, I'm interested in the big questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What's the purpose for being here? How do we live a happy life? What's the goal? Those are all good questions to ask. This book, I was looking everywhere for answers. And first place, there's not many places that have answers. Then when somebody has an answer, you got to be, you got to be pretty, leery about anybody who's got an answer. And then, you read them and go, okay, this is like, I just haven't found anything that beats this. And I'm always looking, and now having, this be such a foundation for me, every time I see something that's good, I'm like, oh, that's the sutras. Oh, the reason why that works is because of the technology, that they've got a piece of the technology that's working into, oh, that's good. But this has it all, and so quick, and so fast, and so pithy. So I decided, because I have done a talk on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras before, but it was an hour and a half, and so I could just, couldn't really drop into some of the models that are present in here. I really just laid out touched on some of the concepts. I decided that I wanted to go through it and study it and drop into it and pull out some of the models. Now, a lot of people believe that when there are maps and models in here, sort of like, so for example, we've all heard of the 8 limbs, right? 8 limbs of yoga, Ashtanga yoga. So Ashtanga, 8 limbs. Lots of people, because we're in America, when you say Ashtanga yoga, it means this certain kind of yoga. It's actually a brand, and it means, oh, I do Ashtanga yoga. It's a lot of sun salutes, and that's Ashtanga yoga. That is not Ashtanga yoga. Ashtanga, the 8 limbs, are the 8 limbs of gradient approaches of how to raise your consciousness that Patanjali laid out here. However, people say that Patanjali is the creator of the 8 limbs. The 8 limbs were out there. He put them all together in this. So there's many maps and models that are much older than this that are in here that sometimes people attribute to him because this is the first time they read it, but they're older than that, if that makes sense. So let's dive in. How does that sound? All right, so first sutra, which I mean, I love the first sutras. I'm just going to set this down. The first sutras, and this would be how we'd want to go through all 96 of them. The first sutra goes like this: Atta, Atta. So Atta, A-T-H-A, Atta, Atta, Atta. Atta means now. Atta, now. And as far as I'm concerned, like we could, like in the end, we could begin and end right there, because it is all about Atta. And even again, in saying the word Atta, there's a t that has you like where is the now of the now? You know, it's like an hourglass. You know, it's like where is now? Atta. You know, like so Atta, now. Next word, yoga.
Second sutra, and these are...
This is the first sutra. Atta, yoga. So this is the second word in the first sutra. Atta, now, yoga, union. Now, union. Now is the place where you're going to find union. This is the only place where you're going to find union. Now, union. Or, as I like to say, now, no union. You know? Now, union, now, yoga, now, join it all together. Nushasanam, and I love this word. Nushasanam. Now again, in Sanskrit, because in truth Sanskrit has nothing to do with the English language, you can't misspell Sanskrit because it's all phonetic, and that's why many Sanskrit words in English are spelled lots of different ways, because it's just phonetic. So Nushasanam. The word Nushasana means to experience, to inquire, to behold, to extend into, to educate. So it's like now, union, experience. Now, union, inquire. Now, union, behold. Now, union, you know, is it possible? You know, now, union, curiosity, open to it. I love that. This first sutra often gets very misinterpreted, and often it's in many interpretations. It's like, and now the recitation on yoga begins. And that is just like such a joke to me, because again, Patanjali wouldn't waste I'd like to introduce myself. He wouldn't waste a whole sentence on saying what's about to come. Now yoga nushasanam, that's it, man. That is a mantra. Now, union, here, present, experience it. Now, union, experience it. That's number 1 sutra. Like, boom, that's a meditation and that's a mantra. Atta, yoga, nushasanam. Atta, yoga, nushasanam. Now, yoga is here. Now, union is possible. Now, the possibility of union open to it. Now, experience it in the now. So one of the ways to memorize these sutras is things like this. You can all do this with me. Atta. This is now. So do this with your hands. Atta. Atta. Yoga, the coming together, joining together. Yoga. And inquiring. Nushasanam. Hatha yoga nushasanam. Hatha yoga nushasanam. Hatha yoga nushasanam. That's your first sutra. Okay? So we'll go on to the second sutra. Yogas, same as yoga, but yogas. Chitta vritti, one of my favorite words. Vritti nirodha. Nirodha. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha. So, union happens, yoga happens when your higher mind, your chitta, is awake and can balance out the vrittis. So the vrittis, I love, in Sanskrit there are many words, it's a little bit like Yiddish. Like nobody needs to tell you what the definition of schmuck is. You know, if you call someone a schmuck, you're like, a schmuck is a schmuck. I mean, like, you know, like you get what it means, okay? So vrittis is sort of like that. Vrittis are the vacillations of the mind, okay? The crazy insanity of the mind. I like to think of the vrittis like this. So right now, here we are in this room, and there are internet waves going through this room and cell phone waves. And on those internet waves and cell phone waves, we've got all the information. We've got ChatGPT, we've got pornography, we've got, you know, the news, we've got every viewpoint you could possibly. It's all out there. The vrittis, the insanity is all out there. Those are the vrittis, okay? And they're constant, okay? But the mind is a vacillating wave of the vrittis. Most people are not in charge of their attention. So what happens is they wake up and the vrittis just take them, and it's like, what will happen to me today? And off the drama goes. Will I have a good day? Will I have a bad day? You know, like what will affect me? When we start to get the chitta involved, the chitta is the consciousness that chooses and starts to become aware of our attention and says, I get to decide which vritti I'm going to put attention into. I get to decide, oh wow, my mind got distracted over here and really got attracted to that. I'm going to pull that off right now and put my attention on this. Okay, but without chitta, the decision making, you're in the land of vrittis. Most people are living in the land of vrittis. Okay, and they love being in. I mean, it's Instagram and the scrolling, which can happen so easily. Like a half hour can go in such a minute because it is so entertaining. And I would rather have a half hour scrolling than I would a half hour of television, because it knows what I like. It knows I love dog videos. It's like I can be entertained, in 30-second intervals, and it's like, what's next and what's next and what's next and what's next, and they're just so pithy and fast, and it's the land of the vrittis. It's the land of entertainment, and I love it. Chitta is the decider. Chitta starts to say, I'm going to be in charge of my attention. It starts to create witness consciousness. Nirodha means right relationship. Get into right relationship. Yoga, union happens when you establish witness consciousness that begins to be in charge of its attention and choose which vrittis you want to ride at any time, and creates balance in life, a balanced mind. Okay? Most people are not in charge of their attention at all. And we're in a land that is constantly grabbing and choosing and finding the science of better and better ways to grab our attention, which is why this works so well. And most people are not in charge of their attention, which means that they're just dragged around constantly by whatever is attracting or repulsing, the two opposites, their attention. But when you start to get witness consciousness that decides and is in charge of your attention, which is why there's so many exercises in yoga that are about learn to focus your attention. So many of the practices, even like I was saying, the practice of mantra. Oh yeah, come back to the mantra. Oh yeah, come back to the mantra. Oh yeah, come back to the mantra. Okay? And in practicing mantra, when you start to say, okay, I'm going to do a round of mala beads, so that's 7 minutes. Then you say, I'm going to do 100 rounds of mala beads. Okay, so that's, a lot of 7 hours of mantra. That's 7 hours or 7 minutes where you are directing your attention, and when your attention is on that, it's not feeding the other habitual ways that your attention goes. So you start to break habitual patterning with the mind, with attention focusing devices, which there are plenty in yoga. But ultimately, it's the methodology of learn how to be in charge of your attention. That's a very important skill in terms of creating a sense of union. Most people are not. It's just really simple. I mention this a lot because it was certainly has been one of the biggest learnings in my life about teaching. So I lived in an ashram for nearly a decade the first time. Had a family, taught yoga teacher training, blah, blah, blah. Went back, was the dean of the School of Yoga for another 11 years, Ayurveda and massage, and then left more yoga teacher training. But I then turned my attention towards teaching yoga and mindfulness in trauma-related drug and alcohol settings. And most people are addicts because they're self-medicating in some way. There's trauma at the basis here in some way, shape, and form, and drugs and alcohol are a good way to handle not dealing with trauma. But these people are not, for the most part, in charge of their attention at all, okay? And getting them interested in starting to be on the journey of exercising that muscle, of training the attention, is where it all begins. And people who are not in charge of their attention are not free. They think they are, but they're not. They're a victim. They're constantly being pulled over here and pushed over there. When you're in charge of your attention, you start to be free, get free, because freedom is all about choice. I get to decide whether I'm going to ride this roller coaster or not. I get to decide whether I want to energize my complaint about this person or my love for this person. I get to decide whether I think, I'm going to succeed at this, or, oh God, this is all going to blow up in my face, and most people aren't on that game. Like, it's really, and that is the heart of it. Yes, Roberto.
Just from what I was saying about the breath, it's pretty much the same thing. You can either be thinking all day or you're aware of your breath. If you're not aware of your breath, then your respiratory system runs by itself.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you become aware of the breath, then you're actually starting to take charge. So it's very linked with the breath that way. I mean,
very linked. So in yoga, and certainly one of the key practices is conscious breathing. There's many in the art of pranayama. There's many different ways to breathe: fast, slow, some to heat up, some to slow down, some to stimulate the vagus nerve and create rest, some to create catharsis and more energy, and everything in between. But taking our breath from being involuntary, non-deliberate, and unconscious, and bringing it so that it's under our conscious control. And like you said, it's one of the few things in the autonomic nervous system that actually we can control. And that's because the diaphragm, we've been through this as many of you before, is one of the few muscles in our body that is both smooth and striated. So smooth muscles are like the heart, the digestion. They're run by your reptilian brain. You don't control them. They're all on autonomic. I'm not telling my breakfast to go down here, come down here, and come out there. My peristalsis is happening all from the reptilian brain, okay? Most of the time, we don't think about our breath. We go to bed at night and we're not thinking, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Like, if I don't think that, I won't breathe. No, it totally runs on automatic. However, everyone, take a deep breath in now. Inhale and hold it at the top. 1, 1,000. 2, 1,000. 3, 1,000. And exhale. Now what we just did there was our striated muscles, which are run by our prefrontal cortex, just overrode the smooth muscles. Okay? Striated muscles are the ones that go, I'm going to raise my right hand, I'm going to point my finger up to the sky, I'm going to tap my forehead. So I'm deciding how I want to be. So going back to recovery, one of the best practices that I could begin to give many of these, and again, many of the men, twice as many men in drug and alcohol rehab than women. Practices like conscious breathing that start to create new pathways, new dendrites between prefrontal cortex and reptilian brain. Reactive, fight-flight response, unconscious, conscious choice. This is react, this is how would I like to respond. In many of these men, their brains weren't online or connecting at all, okay? And then starting to create conscious breath starts to link up the brain. So wow, that's really fascinating, And so it does put us back in charge of our attention. When we decide, I'm going to do 10 minutes of conscious breathing, no matter what it is. My attention's on my breath. I'm breathing in, to the count of 1. I'm breathing out to the count of 2, all through the nose. Great. Do that for 10 minutes. Here's the key of all concentration exercises. When your attention wanders, bring it back. That's the key. When your attention wanders, bring it back. Whether it's focus your attention on a candle flame, put your, place your attention on the eye of, your left eye of your friend, recite your mantra. When your attention wanders, bring it back. That's it. So same with breath, but while you're on that conscious breathing, you're connected to your body. The breath is breathing in and out. You're deciding how to breathe. You're linking up the brain. It's creating a lot of incredible benefits. So these practices aren't just accidental, But again, and it's great to go, what are they causing? But a lot of it is be in charge of your attention. And that's what pretty much any practice is about, of anything. Wow, my attention just wandered. Wow, I got sabotaged over here by some other, distraction or thinking. So, yogas chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga happens, union happens, when your higher consciousness, your higher self comes in, creates a right relationship with the vrittis, and you get to choose and create balance in your mind, okay? So guess what? It goes like this. We have already got yoga, yogas, okay? Chitta, jnana mudra, chitta. Vrittis, wee, wiggle your fingers, vrittis, they're all over the place. Nirodha, balance, okay? So it goes, yogas, chitta, vritti, nirodha. Yogas, chitta, vritti, nirodha. Yogas, chitta, vritti, nirodha. And then I like to do this. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. That's not on it, but just like it. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
So he's telling us right away what we're up to. You want union, you got to create a higher consciousness. You got to get the vrittis in balance here and know who you are. You don't get rid of the vrittis. Okay, so this, going back to many interpretations of this, which again really bother me, is when many people interpret this and say yoga happens when you cease by the cessation of thought. When you cease thought, yoga happens. And it's like, basically when you stop the vacillating waves of perception, the vrittis, okay, then peace happens. And it's like, you don't stop the vacillating waves of perception. They don't ever stop. You do disassociate from them, okay? And there is a big difference. If we go in and everybody thinks like, oh, many people, first time meditating, you go in and it's like, quiet your mind. Okay, well, I'm going in, I'm quiet, my mind is quiet, I'm quiet. Wait, who's talking? You should shut up, whatever, who are you? Okay, I'm gonna be quiet now. Oh my God, but I'm still talking. Okay, well, stop, then be quiet and just sit here right now. Oh my God, the fan is really bothering me. Okay, stop, and it's sort of like, just be quiet, okay? Am I breathing? I'm breathing in and out. Should I concentrate on my breath? I mean, that's a normal beginning meditation if you're paying attention. Like there's a constant, okay, so wow, what do? You don't stop that. You begin to just, okay, notice it. Well, when you start to notice it, there's a noticer, okay? There's someone who's noticing the vrittis, noticing the conversation. The more you notice the conversation, the more you start to associate with the noticer rather than the conversation. And the noticer is way beyond the conversation. As you begin to, not begin, but as you practice meditation for longer extended periods, the mind, the vrittis, and that constant chattering of the mind, it's out there. Their thoughts come and go, but they're at the same. If they're out there, so is, oh my gosh, I was just taken away. I became the wind for a while. I hear the birds in the background. I became those for a while. Oh yeah, I wonder what time lunch is. Oh yeah, back to okay. But it's all starts to, the noticer is what is important. Swami Kripalu, my teacher, said, the goal of all yoga practice, and this is to establish non-judgmental, compassionate self-observation in all that you do. So whenever we're practicing, the practice, whatever the practice is, it is to create non-judgmental, compassionate self-observation in all that you do. Establishing that witness consciousness, the Vijnanamaya kosha, that is the self that directs attention. And the more you start to be in charge of your attention, the more you start to seat yourself in your Vijnanamaya kosha. And you start to associate with that self that is beyond the mind. Weirdly, this is a little side note, but many of the practices of yoga are often touted as do this practice so you can have a good and easy death, a nice death, so that your passing is easy, so that you go right to the feet of the Lord. And this, the aspect of establishing witness consciousness, when you start to establish with your high self who's having, it's sort of like that saying that says, am I a physical being having an occasional spiritual experience, or am I a spiritual being having a physical experience? Context matters. Who and how you associate with yourself, who you think you are, really matters. And so as you're passing away, if you believe you are your body and your breath, you got a lot to worry about, because all of us suffocate in the end. The body starts down, eventually the breath starts to go, and we start to suffocate. If you are associated with that, and I've had the great fortune of being with numerous people passing away, and some get to that death rattle point, and it's struggling for breath, such fear, like I'm dying, and others, like the breath just turns down. When did they stop breathing? Never noticed. Total association with something else, and the body just as peaceful as can be. And that's really about, who do you think you really are? Where is your attention? As those moments are happening. So yoga practice does make a difference in that. Gandhi, again, his mantra was Ram. First thing he did when he got shot was he said, please forgive them. The second thing he did was he went to reciting his mantra. And because mantra recitation, it says if you die with the words of the Lord on your lip, you head straight to the feet of the Lord. So he was there, his disciples around him, and he was in a state of peace saying his mantra, which was, for many of the people who were around him, another sign that he was a high being. So, pretty cool, huh? Now, sutra number 3, and we're not doing this for all sutras. You'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. So, we're just going to stop here. This will be our last one. Tada! Drashtu Swarupe Vashtanam. Tada Drashtu Swarupe Vashtanam, the third sutra. So, Tadasana, right? We know about Tadasana. Many of you are yogis, know about Tadasana, the mountain pose. Tada! Standing. I stand firm, okay? Drashtu, many of you have heard the word drishti. Drishti often gets misused in today's yoga. People will say, find a drishti. That is not. Drishti is actually, it's this flow of attention. Your drishti is your flowing attention. So it's find something to flow your drishti towards and into. Be in charge of your drishti. This constant flowing of awareness, drishti. So stand firm with your attention, okay? Swarupe, on your divine infinite self. keep your attention on your divine infinite self. And then, enlightenment is yours. So it goes like this. Ta-da! Okay, here we are. We stand tall. Drashtu, okay, our attention. Swarupe, the divine self. And then it all blossoms. So this is the lotus coming out of the mud and right in front of the heart. Blossoms and comes to fruition. So, tada drashtu swarupe vashtanam. Tada drashtu swarupe vashtanam. Tada drashtu, swarupe vashtanam. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. So those are the first 3 sutras, but basically he's just set us up in these first 3 sutras for what's about to happen. That's a pretty good introduction, and now we start to get into it. So any thoughts or questions about those first 3 sutras?
Yeah, what's an example of that? Keep your attention on your divine self.
I like the question. Keep your attention on your divine self. Well, I could go lots of different ways with it because I just thought of this before about the about the whole death thing. I'm going to throw this in because this is a simple way. So in my family, my father was raised in a Christian Science household. And in Christian Science, if you cut your finger, the first thing that you do is you don't look at it and you cover it and you affirm your wholeness. I could never be harmed. I could never be hurt. I could never be cut. I could never bleed. I am completely whole, always. Okay? So, and with that, thank you, angels. I open to any healing miracles. This is just stuff, let the stuff be healed. And lo and behold, we take our thing off and, wow, that's not bad. Put a Band-Aid on it and leave it be. Okay? But what the average person does is they cut their finger and, I'm bleeding! I'm cut! I'm dying! This is a problem! Full identification. Okay? So, like, phoom, in we go. Okay? And off we go on the ride of the vrittis. So, stand firm with your attention in your highest infinite self. That's really an example. Before I get lost in the vrittis, I could never be harmed. In the Bhagavad Gita it says, wind will not wither you, water will not make you moist, a sword cannot pierce you, you cannot be, the flame will not singe you, you cannot be harmed, okay? But this, but then again, it's that question, who are you? Okay, it's saying keep your attention on your infinite, eternal self. And that is where you will find, that's what the practice is. That's where you will find your peace. That's where the lotus of peace will blossom. That's where love comes from. An infinite, eternal whole being can be loving and be fearless. And every avatar that we have, or person that we believe to be an avatar, Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, they came with one message. Love, and they came with another message. I believe I'm infinite, eternal, and whole. I know it. And guess what? You're infinite, eternal, and whole. And that's my job, is to let you know that you are love, you are infinite love, nothing can harm you, your sins are forgiven, death is nothing. Come on in. Welcome, Dasi. Good to see you. That's the good news, and that's basically this. That's the good news. All right. So, any other thoughts or questions or input?
That was a really good answer to that interesting question.
Oh, could have gone lots of different ways with it. So we'll.
Another question.
Oh.
So, what's the purpose of the mudras? And the singing?
Hand mudras.
Yeah.
And the singing. How to remember. Make it embodied. It's a good way to embody it. I certainly like it. Let's just, for the fun of it, do the first 3 sutras. Okay? So here we go. This is a brain challenge, okay? Atha yoga nushasanam yogas chitta vritti nirodha tada drashtu swarupe vashtanam. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Not bad, huh? So, I mean, those are, and again, in repeating them, in landing them in your body, it makes you think about them, and they become a mantra. And these mantras are powerful because there's messages in them that remind you that to stay seated, keep your attention on your highest self.
I've had opportunity to study the sutras a bit, and they're all that dry side that you're talking about. Even I've gotten 3 or 4 texts together, and it's all the dry side, like it was some nun sequestered away that wrote it instead of somebody that was kind of alive. And so I'm curious what the sources are. I really like how you interpreted those first 3, because my teachings have mostly been that other dry stuff, like, really, okay, well, it's interesting, but it's not super engaging.
Well, here's what I've noticed over the years. That initially the first books that came out, they were done by scholars who lived in their head and found some interesting scripture, and they scholarly-like interpreted it. And a scholar is very different than a practitioner. Okay, and now then practitioners started to interpret them, but they needed some of the scholars. So now there's good mixes of practitioners, scholars that have some practice behind them, because the experience of them is what reveals them. So studying them does not. The revolution comes in the practice, and then you're like, oh, I get what that means, but somebody who hasn't done the practice may not get what that means. They're surmising.
So I'm curious, what sources of the sutras do you know about with more of that kind of practitioner's perspective on it?
Well, over the years, there's lots of copies out about the sutras now. And that's why, again, I would say that book that I was telling you about with 12 different translations, 12 good translations, and there's some translations by women also, which I really like, so it has that feminine perspective. But then my suggestion is, it's got blank page. You sit down, you meditate, you feel into it. What is this saying to you? What are the words that you want to use to describe, this experience?
And what was that book?
It's called the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras by Salvatore Sambita, the unadorned thread of yoga, which is what, so.
Salvatore, Italian.
Salvatore Zambita, yeah. Salvatore, yep. So, keep setting my books down here. So off we go. Any other questions or thoughts? So it says, 1, 2, and 3. So I'll just give you some of the first interpretation, which again I already told you I disagree with. With great respect and love, now the blessings of yoga instruction is offered. That is ridiculous to me, so okay. And then it says, yoga is experienced in the mind which has ceased, okay? And often it's like ceased the vacillating waves of perception. But this, and this is why I like this, which has ceased to identify itself with the vacillating waves of perception. That's a good distinction that a lot of people don't make, which is one of the ways where I go, good on you, Mukunda. Yoga, union is experienced in the mind which ceases to identify itself with the vrittis. Okay? Cool. And then when this happens, when we're no longer associating with the vrittis, the seer is revealed. The higher consciousness is revealed, and it rests in its own essential nature. This is the resting aspect of true self. Okay? And then the 4th sutra. At all other times, the self appears to assume the form of thought vacillations, and the true self is lost. So this is the difference between, when we say, oh, that person's really aware, oh, that person's really conscious, oh, that person's really unconscious, okay? So the higher self is lost. that person is really in charge of their attention. That person is really deliberate. That person is really directed. That person is really conscious and choosing and has freedom about how they choose to be. That person is really not. Never know what you're going to get over there. Okay? And again, going back to recovery, some of these people would walk in, man, as I like to say, what they do, what they think, what they feel, what they say, completely all out of alignment. Everything about it in conflict, Whereas this alignment of what you do, what you think, what you feel, what you say, all match up. There's a level of authenticity and consciousness in it. That rings differently. One, you look and go, wow, what's going on over there? That's like a static TV. And the other, you're like, this has a clear resonance and vibration to it. So that's the union that we're looking to experience. Okay, now, there are many times where this happens, where Patanjali will go into, the vacillations are of 5 types, and then he goes through the different kinds of vacillations, and we're going to skip that. What those 5 different kinds of vrittis are. Misconception, sleep is one of them, memory is one of them. And then it says this, first chapter, Sutra 12. The vacillating waves of perception, which is Mukunda's interpretation for the vrittis, are stilled, and I would say that's a misinterpretation, through constant earnest practice and dispassionate non-attachment. I love this. So the vrittis are stilled, which I would say you begin to disassociate from the vrittis and be in charge of your attention through consistent earnest practice and dispassionate non-attachment. Those 2 things are totally opposed to each other. So the way I like to describe that is Swami Kripala used to talk about will and surrender. And we get places with 2 feet. The 2 feet are this. This is where I'd like to go. This is where I'm headed. This is what my goals are. This is who I am. This is what I want to establish. This is what I want to manifest. Thy will be done, Lord. I really don't give a crap about anything. I want your will, and I'm not attached to anything, and, direct me. Wait, I'm going over here. This is what I want. This is where I'm going. This is how I'm getting there. This is my to-do list. Thy will be done, Lord. Totally non-attached. Direct me. Like I'm doing my best here. Wow, that's crazy making to be on that pendulum of what it takes. But that is true practice. True practice, set the goal, set the intention, and know in all practice, because when we go out with these experiments, we were all brought up in these schools of right-wrong games. Go out and get the right answer. There's a right answer to get. Those aren't inquiries. That's not inquiry-based learning. That's right-wrong learning. And right away, many of you, we know the right answer before we even go out, so we're looking for the right answer. Well, that's not a real experiment. That's looking for the right answer, which is very different than, wow, here's where I'm going, this is what I'd like, and I'm open to the fact that I could be totally, like the goal that I got set could be totally off. So help me out here, God. It could be completely wackadoodle, but this is my best wildest guess, and I'm going towards it because I have to, and please direct me, please help me. Wow, those are 2 big different selves. But that's real practice. Real practice heads out on an inquiry with, you sort of set a hypothesis, but you're open to the fact that your hypothesis could be totally wrong when you start to do the experiment, and may prove something different. Most of us don't live in inquiry-based living, and yoga really is an inquiry-based experiment. Let me inquire rather than let me go out and get the right answer. Generally, that's why people don't tend to learn anything, because we're always really only always getting what we thought we were going to get, rather than let me see what I get. Let me really find out what I'm going to get. Most people don't know how to do that. But this practice, he talks about practice later in a sutra. He describes practice. Continuous struggle over long periods of time, with great reverence and faith in God. That's a good description of practice. Continuous struggle over long periods of time with great faith in God. That's practice. That's practice. you know. And we tend to not, you know, understand practice. We're so fast to give up practices. Oh, I failed, you know. Oh, I do this Course in Miracles year-long program. It's so simple. You read a thing every day. I do it online. I have people start, and you know the attrition rates of year-long programs are really high. So I know that, you know, no matter how good the program is, I'm going to lose people. And at the beginning, oh my God, I talk with people. I'm like, no matter what, when you give up, because it will happen, you'll be like, okay, I screwed up. I forgot the last 3 lessons. No problem. Just start right where you were. But oh my God, we lose people because I do it. I screwed up. I'm going to do it again next year. I'll try it again. It just didn't work. It's like, just keep going. Just keep going. Continuous struggle over long periods of time. Forget doing it right. I blew it. I did it wrong. It's not happening. I'll do it again. You know, it's like, and that it just points out our inability to really learn, and true learning comes from consistent, earnest struggle over long periods of time with great faith in God. So I'm all for that kind of learning.
It's an interesting term, struggle, nonetheless. But I guess the way you presented it, that's really what it is.
Mm-hmm. Grappling, struggle. I mean, we could change the word lots of different ways. Continuous effort, you know, staying with it. Yep.
We need to leave in a few minutes.
All right.
So
glad that you came for even. I said to Tara when she was like, "Well, come for a bit." I'm like, better than a little bit, better than none. So glad you came. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're still here a few more minutes.
Okay.
We might just
Great.
signal ourselves and get up. So
When you do,
thank you all.
I wanted to say a joke. When you do, don't let the door hit you in the ass. You have to go. Continuous struggle over long periods of time with great reverence or faith in the Lord. And when we get to that, here it is. It's just so you know, it's Sutra 114. When practice is this is how he says it. When practice is indeed firmly grounded, when it is pursued incessantly with reverence for a long time. So my quote, and then above. Of these two, practice is the continuous struggle to become firmly established in the stable state of the true self. Which is, again, back here. Continuous struggle to stay, you know, to establish yourself in a stable state of your true self.
So is the fun with the sutras that you go 1, 2, 3, 114?
There you go. Well, 114. Chapter 1, 14. Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 14?
Yeah, that's what I'm popping around here. Because I left, I didn't want to go through the 5 descriptions of the vrittis. We don't need them. They're sort of, you know, I mean, if you were going to really dig, we would go in them, but we're not going to dig it that way. So the vacillating waves of perception, that's what we're learning how to be in relationship with them, not to still them. Because again, if any of us could go in, if there was an off switch to this mind, we would all just go, quiet your mind, no problem, go in, mind's quiet. We would all just do it. But that doesn't happen. It's really like, how do I live with this mind? How do I, you know, have this mind as a roommate? And how do I begin to disassociate with that roommate and not let them be in the driver's seat? Most people, the vrittis, are in the driver's seat. You want them in the back seat, your higher consciousness in the driver's seat. You know, it's like the vrittis are the commentaries. You know, like, oh, pretty, great, you know, cool. But back there, I'm driving, you know. Glasses on, glasses off. Witness consciousness. I would say, so in the model of the koshas, which we're going to get to, the koshas describe, and this map is really vital for understanding Patanjali Sutras and yoga. So the koshas say that we have 5 bodies that go from the gross to the most subtle. The gross being, here's body number 1, physical body. You can break down the physical body with anatomy and physiology. You know, we can understand things like striated muscles and, you know, smooth muscles and our digestive system and nervous system and circulatory system. Great. That's the body, physical body. The next one is the breath. the prana body, the energy, the life force body. This starts to get more subtle, but it's still physical because you're breathing in and out of your body. And it's the life force, because the first thing you do when you come onto the planet is you've been smacked on the butt and the baby breathes in, and now soul and body are joined. You go breathe in and out your whole life until last exhale, last thing you'll do. Now spirit is free to leave the physical form. And if you've been with anybody who's passed away, very quickly that thing becomes weirdly lifeless, cold, and it's just so weird to be around a lifeless body where there's no prana in it. You get like, that is not it. So, this pranayam, when you start to deal with your breath body, you start to deal with the life force body, the energy body that resides in the physical body. The third is the mind, okay, which has the vrittis in it, okay, the constant description of everything. The purpose of the mind is to label things. Boy, girl, money, no money, American, speaks English. We label everything. Those labels then turn into beliefs. Those beliefs turn into mass consciousness and concepts. That's the mind. Then this is the fourth one is witness consciousness, the Vijnanamaya kosha. This is not the mind. This is the non-judgmental, compassionate self-observation that watches the mind. This is the one that chooses the beliefs. The mind is the one that gets indoctrinated into beliefs. Okay? So many people, when they have discussions, the reason why we get upset having discussions about beliefs is because they are their mind. I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm a good person, and then we argue, because you either agree with me or you're wrong, you're opposed, It's very different when you're the believer of your beliefs, which is what yoga really asks you to do. Yoga doesn't ask you to believe anything. It says, do these practices and you will have an experience. And those experiences will help you become the believer of your beliefs, okay? So, if we start to have discussions about beliefs, so you like this belief. Tell me, what's your experience of that belief? How does that help? My thing about beliefs is not whether they're right or wrong, it's whether they're helpful. Is that a helpful belief? Does that help your experience? We can't ever say whether any belief is right or wrong. As a matter of fact, we could say pretty much every belief that you have is wrong. Everyone. So, and then what's cool about yoga is the ultimate experience of yoga and union is beyond belief. You have to let go of every belief, even your most spiritual and lovely and grand beliefs. You have to let those go to the place of non-belief, to sit in the essence of the self that is beyond the mind. So the beliefs don't matter, but there are helpful beliefs that can get you closer to a state of mindlessness. And the fifth kosha is the soul. There's no yoga practice for the soul. It's waiting there for us to experience. So that's the difference, is there's the soul, and then there's the witness consciousness, which we would call like the voice of the soul, but different, So it's like, and each of those, so we go from time-space continuum, can begin and end and die, to infinite, eternal whole soul, that's disembodied. Wow. 5 layers of selves, which are multidimensional. Very not the Western way of looking at the world, where we associate ourselves so clearly with our body.
Very awesome presentation. Thank you so much.
So glad you came, Roberto. Yep. Bye, Tara. Good to be with you. I turned this book upside down, right side up. So let's just go over these 12, 13, and 14. I think they're really great and clear. The vacillating waves of perception are stilled through earnest practice and non-attachment, dispassionate non-attachment. It's like I, for the longest time, could not figure out what the hell that meant. Like, how do I hold those two together? And because of their opposition, it's crazy making. But that the vacillating waves of perception, the vrittis, are stilled, and I would say that you begin to disassociate from them with consistent, earnest practice, so willpower and some goal and some desire to do that, and total non-attachment. It'll happen when it happens, this lifetime, another lifetime, maybe never. know. Of these two, practice is the continuous struggle to become firmly established in the stable state of the true self. So that's what we're looking for. It's a continuum. This is the heart of any non-dual philosophy, and it's the heart of A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles says you are infinite, eternal, and whole. Like that's it. That's the truth of who you are. And any fear that you have is to be walked out the door. Any fear that you have says that you believe you're a body. Every fear that we have is related to the belief that we could die. Every fear. If we knew and believed that we were infinite, eternal, and whole, we would have zero to fear. We would live so differently. So it's saying here, we want to be firmly established in the stable state of the true self, of vidya, of the knowing that we are infinite, eternal, and whole. Practice is indeed firmly grounded when it is practiced incessantly with reverence and over great long periods of time. So it's setting us up here. This is right at the beginning. Practice is the name of the game, people. Practice is the name of the game. And this is where, what do they say? The boys cut the boys from the men. There's a saying like that. What is it? We're going to separate the boys from the men here. Okay? So, I have certainly noticed that it all comes down to practice. And it used to really bother me when, Yogi Desai would have darshan, and often people would come up and ask a question, and he would look at them and he would say 3 words. And for years this pissed me off. He would say, practice, practice, practice. And I would say, that's such a rote answer. I could say that. Anybody could say that. That's not a very enlightened answer. Oh my God. I had a whole bunch of commentary about it. But now I'm like, oh my God, there's no answer to that question. Just practice, practice, practice. Just go back to practice. Just practice. We're going to be practicing till the end of our life. Start to enjoy practicing. People think practice is like a punishment. Practice is learning. Practice is where it's at. What are you practicing next? What practices are you in? That's where all the juice is in the practice. And we tend to think if I was, knew it all, I would be done, and somehow I wouldn't have anything to practice. It's like constant practice. Non-attachment. So now it describes non-attachment. Non-attachment is the mastery of consciousness where one is free from craving objects of enjoyment, whether they've been perceived or imagined from promises in the scriptures. So even the lofty things like enlightenment, we can be attached to enlightenment. And I know that I certainly was when I moved into Kripalu. I was on the fast track to get enlightened. I was going to get off this planet as fast as possible because life sucked here. And the best thing I could do was just get enlightened and leave. And I read, enlightenment, you're done with the cycle of birth and death. I'll never be born again. This is good. This is my last lifetime. I'm going to practice, and eat the right diet and have the right guru and do all the right things until I can get off of here. And it took me a long time to realize that I was doing that because I was so unhappy. That I was not really happy here. Thus, I was spurred by this great desire to leave the planet. And I remember actually one of my many enlightenment moments, sitting after many years of practice, sitting in meditation. And I remember thinking, I did it. I really got everything I came for. I have the ability to be in touch with God and my divine guidance in any moment. I don't ever get the future, but I get my next step. I thought I was going to get my future, but I just get the next step. It's good enough. I'm happy being in the present moment. I'm happy. And I'm also happy, now that I know that I'm infinite, eternal, and whole, where's there to go? Where? So enjoy this life. Let's say I live to be 150 years old. That's nothing in eternity, And let's say I'm born another 1,000 lifetimes. That's nothing in eternity. And let's say next lifetime, I'm elephant poop or a rock or fly or, that's wonder. I've got eternity, And the moment I started to get that, I was like, oh, I'm off the cycle of birth and death because I don't care anymore. Like that's where, whoa, because I'm free of that cycle of birth and death. Doesn't mean that I won't be born or die again. I just don't care. Like I'm here forever to experience whatever, So thy will be done, Lord. And it's like, okay, wow, I didn't know that was how I was going to get free of the cycle of birth and death, not caring. But, whoa, cool. Yes. Okay, well, we're going to end it here. So what time is it? It's 5:30? Okay, so that's when we're calling it. All right, so
26.
5 what?
26.
Okay. All right, so thank you all. Great to be with you, and we will continue this. But I want to say, and this is Michael and Christine, I know you're racing out, but the good stuff is coming because he's just setting us up in the first chapter for telling us what's about to come. But when the practices start coming, that's where you want to pay attention. So next month, I will not be here. So there will be no Dharma talk in July because I will be doing workshops in the East Coast.
Mainland.
On the mainland.
You're teaching next month, right?
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
good to be with you.